My name is Adam Trebilco. I would like you to know a little bit about my life. I was born on March 2, 1861, in the village of Darley, now Paradise, South Australia. My father, John Trebilco, and my mother, Nancy May, were both born in Cornwall. They married in 1848. I had a relationship with Martha Norton. She was born in 1861 in Mitchell Flat, which is near Nairn in South Australia. We had one son, Alfred Ernest. Alf and his mother moved to Victoria and then to Tamworth in New South Wales, where Alfred, now known as Alf Norton, became a well-known and influential apiarist. In 1884 I was one of the people appointed as a district constable in East Torrens for a 12-month term where there are insufficient officers of the police force to maintain the law and protect life and property. Along with my brother Thomas, I was a member of the first cricket team at Montacute. I married Harriet Ellen Lana, known as Nellie, on March 25, 1886 at age 25. We were married in St. Paul's Church of England, Montacute. She was born in 1866 in Goodwood, South Australia. She was 19 years old when we married, 6 years younger than me. We had 5 children: Reg, Ida, Norm, Bert and Marjorie. The 2 girls and my wife sadly passed away from TB. Nellie aged 38 and Ida aged 15, both in 1905, and Marjorie in 1907 aged 11. An article from the Quiz and the Lantern newspaper, Thursday, 6 May 1897. The Norwood Cycle Club visited Mr. Trebilco's excellent orchard on Saturday last. Some 2 years ago, on the occasion of a similar visit, this gardener complained that he could get no sale for his fruit, and stated his intention of starting in the jam line. He started in the back veranda with a small copper, and today he has a big factory, while his output for the current year amounts to 2,600, 4 dozen cases. I married Sarah Winifred O'Brien on September 12, 1906 in St. Luke's Church in Adelaide. She was the daughter of John and Elizabeth Frisby and was born in 1868 in Clarendon, South Australia. She was 37 years old when we married, 8 years younger than me. We had 3 children, Sarah, William and Daisy. Sadly, the 2 girls died shortly after birth. Working on the land can be quite challenging. The following are a few examples. On January 12, 1909, a grass fire broke out at 5th Creek and damage was done to my feed and fencing. It also surrounded the cottages. This was followed by a flood on May 17, 1909. Great damage was done to gardens by the heavy rains. Mr. C. Smith's garden was completely submerged, and my garden and others have also suffered extensively. Bridges were washed away and trees blown down. The main road to Adelaide was also damaged. Great washaways occurred, and the metal was washed off the road in places. The creek carrying in its course fruit and vegetables of all description. It was the biggest flood known here for 20 years. On February 22, 1910, a fire broke out in my property and spread so rapidly that before assistance could be obtained, the jam factory was completely destroyed. I was just about to start pulp making, and a large quantity of sugar, pulp tins, and jam were destroyed. The fire spread to the garden, where a large number of fruit trees were scorched and destroyed, and I estimated my losses to be £400. On September 3, 1931, there was another flood. I had been here for 60 years and only remember one flood worse than this one. I had spent 40 years building up the land, and now all my work was undone in a few hours. About 2 acres of choicest soil had borne a crop of potatoes. They were swamped, and the water, sweeping over the road which leads to my house, something it had not done for many decades, scored channels several yards wide and feet deep in part of the orchard. It uprooted a dozen lemon and orange trees and swept them away. The photo is showing the main road to Montacute due to this flood. An unfortunate incident was in 1918 when at market I slipped on an orange peel, severely injuring my leg. Also in 1925 I was working on an engine and my hand became entangled in the cogs, almost severing a finger. The following is an article from Toilers of the Hills by E. H. Halleck, 1893. The next orchard is that of another well-known gardener, Mr. John Trebilco, a worthy sire of worthy sons. The entrance to the older portion of his garden fronts the road and is marked by a splendid growth of poplar and other trees. Its area is 15 acres, which extends up what is known as Trebilco's Gully. Mr. A. Trebilco now occupies the old homestead where jam making was being carried on to considerable extent. All the old fruit trees appeared weary of well-doing, but up the gully the younger trees were looking much better than their seniors. This following article and photo are from Encyclopedia of South Australia. Alfred Adam Trebilco, horticulturist of the Poplars, Fifth Creek, is a son of Mr. John Trebilco of the same district and was born at Paradise in the year 1861. After receiving his education at the school in Montacute and upon its conclusion began work on his father's estate at Fifth Creek, obtaining an excellent insight into practical gardening operations, and continued in this employment until 21 years of age. Mr. Trebilco then leased a portion of the garden from his father and began to till the soil on his own account, meeting with encouraging success from the very outset. In 1893, fruit being very plentiful, he commenced jam making and has carried on this industry with success for the past 14 years. In 1907, Mr. Trebilco Sr., having added to his original estate until it now covered an area of 140 acres, of which 60 acres had been transformed into a beautiful fruit orchard, decided to relinquish active gardening pursuits and handed the property over to the subject of this memoir. Situated in view of the magnificent scenery afforded by two ranges of hills, one on either side, the Poplars may be described as one of the many beauty spots of the state, and is reached by a drive through the hills, which at every turn presents some fresh attraction. Oranges, apples, pears, plums, loquats alike thrive in this congenial environment, together with the other varieties of fruit commonly grown in the gardens and orchards of the district, for which a ready market is always found. Being of a very retiring disposition, Mr. Trebilco has never sought distinction in public office, but has found sufficient scope for his energy and interests in the working of his property and the bringing up of his family. His marriage took place in 1886 to Miss Ellen Larner of Kensington, who died in 1905, leaving him with a family of 4 children. In September 1906, Mr. Trebilco married for the second time, his present wife being a daughter of the late Mr. J. W. Frisbee, of Clarendon. In 1920 I divided most of my property between my sons Reg, Norm and Bert, while I kept the section around the Poplars which went to my youngest son Bill when I retired. In 1933 I moved from Montacute to 3 George Street, Payneham, and later to the Home for Incurables after I suffered a stroke. I died on the 29th of June 1935 at Fullerton and was buried in the Montacute Cemetery, where my wife Nellie and my parents are also buried. The death date on my headstone is a little bit out. Thanks for taking the time to watch my story. Goodbye.